The second Alysa Liu hit the ice in Milan, the atmosphere shifted. The judges saw it, the crowd felt it, even her competition sensed it. Because the skater out there wasn't the same girl who walked away from the sport at 16, and what she was about to unleash that night would quietly dismantle a narrative the entire skating world had accepted as gospel. But to really grasp why this routine sent shockwaves through the sport, you have to rewind to the moment Alysa walked away completely. For a split second in Milan, the arena went dead silent. Not that usual Olympic hush, the nervous kind with whispering fans and cameras hunting for jittery faces. This was heavy. Alysa stood at center ice, loose, shoulders down, almost too casual. No visible nerves, no frantic breathing rituals, no staring down the judges. If you didn't know her, you'd think she was just killing time. But the diehards, the ones who bleed figure skating, they knew something was off because Alysa Liu wasn't supposed to be there. Just 4 years ago, the world wrote her obituary in the sport. Her story ended in the wildest way possible. She just walked out. No scandal, no career-ending injury, no crushing defeat. She retired right after the Olympics. To get why that stunned everyone, you have to look back at the teenager who was already shredding the history books of American skating. January 2019, Little Caesars Arena, Detroit, the impossible happened. A 13-year-old girl skated onto the ice at the US National Championships. 13, most kids that age are grinding in juniors, paying their dues. Not Alysa, she was going head-to-head with the nation's absolute best. And within minutes, the crowd realized they were watching history. She threw down a triple axel, one of the hardest jumps in the game, and she didn't just land one, she landed two. Even casual fans know that's insane. For American women, that jump had basically gone extinct. Hitting one is a headline, nailing two in the same program. At 13 years old, that's alien. When the night ended, Alysa Liu was the youngest US national champion ever, a record that stood for decades, smashed by a kid who still had homework waiting on her desk. From that night on, she wasn't just a prospect, she was the chosen one, the future Olympic gold. You heard it in the commentary, saw it in the headlines, a silent, crushing weight attached to her name. But hype is heavy, especially when it lands before you were even old enough to get a learner's permit. Behind the curtain, Alysa's life was nothing like the glossy photos on your feed. The grind started at 5 in the morning, traditional school. Forget about it. Her classroom was the backseat of a car, squeezed between practices, flights, and competitions, rinse and repeat. Elite athletes know the drill, but Alysa's situation had an extra layer of intensity. Her dad, Arthur, was all in. We were talking massive resources Paddy poured into this dream from day one. Estimates say over $1 million dropped on coaching, choreo, and ice time. Before she even hit puberty, you can guess what that price tag does to the pressure gauge. Nobody had to say it. It hung in the air. Every skate felt heavier. Every routine had to pay off. Every slip-up felt like a disaster, yet she kept dominating. 2020, she defended her crown, 2 titles before turning 15, and the legend only grew louder. The prodigy, the savior, the one destined to bring the gold back to American soil. But here's the blind spot. The success was moving faster than she could handle. Pressure is tricky. It creeps up on you layer by layer, until you don't even realize you're drowning. Practice after practice, meet after meet, weight upon weight, until one day the sport you loved starts feeling like a cage. Alysa reached the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics at just 16. For anyone else, that ticket is the dream. For Alysa, it felt off. She took 6th place, a solid finish for a teenager battling the global titans, but inside, the switch had already flipped. Later, she dropped a bombshell that floored her fans. She admitted she wasn't in Beijing hunting for hardware. She was counting down the seconds until she could leave. Picture the scene for a moment. The Olympics, the absolute pinnacle of athletic glory. Yet, amidst the fanfare, a 16-year-old contender is quietly plotting her exit. Not because she lost, but because she was completely burned out. Just weeks after the Olympic flame went out, Alysa Liu dropped a bombshell. Brief, unwavering, brutally simple. She was hanging up her skates for good. 16 years old, no planned hiatus, no see you later. Just finished. To the insiders, it felt like a narrative cut short in the first act. A phenomenon who skyrocketed to fame overnight, only to vanish into thin air just as fast. Back then, the pundits were certain the book on Alysa Liu was closed. They had no clue her story was barely hitting the midpoint. When she walked away in 2022, the consensus was it would last. It is the standard script for elite athletics. Kid burns out, takes a breather season, and crawls back once the spotlight dims. Broadcasters practically guaranteed a return on air. but weeks bled into months, and Alysa remained a ghost. She didn't just step back. She practically erased herself from the sport. Zero meets, no whispered rumors of secret practices, just dead air. Then, the plot twisted. Alysa started chasing the one thing Olympic contenders never get a taste of: a normal life. Sounds basic to us, but for a girl raised in cold rinks and transit terminals, this was uncharted territory. She hit the books at UCLA as a psych major. Suddenly, grueling practice blocks and tour dates weren't dictating her existence. Her world became lecture halls, study groups, and midnight debates in the dorms. Finally, she wasn't the golden child to everyone she met. She was just Alysa, and that shift was monumental. Because when a sport has been your entire identity for years, stepping out of that bubble feels alien, like peeling off a second skin. But gradually, the vibe shifted. Alysa hit the road, not the typical airport hotel arena loop athletes know, where you see nothing and leave in 48 hours. Genuine exploration. She even trekked her way out to the shadow of Mount Everest in Nepal. Consider the juxtaposition: years spent inhaling the stale, freeze-dried air of indoor arenas, swapped for standing thousands of feet up, lungs filling with thin, crisp Himalayan air. No scorecards, no panel of judges, zero pressure, just the planet. And in that silence, Alysa found something she bad lost ages ago: ownership of her own soul. Figure skating is rigid about aesthetics. It is a machine built on tradition. Specific costumes, polished looks, and a narrow mold for how you present yourself. Alysa shattered that mold. She rocked bold, raccoon stripe hair dye jobs. She got piercings. Her vibe shifted from classical ballerina to straight-up alt-rocker. Traditionalists were baffled, but that was exactly the message. For once, Alysa Liu wasn't contorting herself to fit the system. She was sculpting her own persona. Then came the curveball. Distance has a funny way of shifting your perspective when you stay away long enough. She later explained that the hiatus unlocked a crucial realization. She never hated the ice. She loathed the suffocating pressure, the grind, and the toxic idea that a score defined her human value. With the weight of the world gone, an old feeling crept back in. That rush she felt as a kid, the raw speed, the total freedom, the pure, unadulterated high of carving up the ice without worrying about a leaderboard. Early 2024, nearly 2 years post-retirement, Alysa made a move nobody saw coming. She headed to a rink. No elite training complex, no Olympic banners, just a local sheet of ice. She laced up in total secrecy, driven only by curiosity. She slid out just to test the waters, to see if the spark was dead or alive. Was the passion gone, or just buried under years of stress? The answer hit her instantly. That familiar frictionless glide, the crunch of steel edges biting into the ice, the unique spike of adrenaline, and something profound. She realized she could come back for herself, not as the chosen one, not as the savior of the national team, just as a girl who genuinely loved to skate. That changed the game. But a massive question mark loomed over the comeback. The sport hadn't waited for her. New stars had risen, fresh champions were hogging the limelight. So when Alysa Liu finally declared a return to the arena, the world didn't know what to expect. 2 years away from the grind of elite figure skating isn't a break. It's a lifetime. Jumps vanish overnight. Your timing rots, confidence evaporates. Analysts wrote her off as a symbol, not a contender, a washed-up prodigy looking for closure. But Alysa Liu wasn't back for a joyride. She was on a mission to prove the skeptics wrong and expose a truth the sport had ignored. The woman stepping back onto the ice was nothing like the girl who left it. When Liu dropped the comeback news in early 2024, the industry didn't gasp. They shrugged. Cautious, skeptical, and you can blame them. The ice is cruel to anyone who leaves. 2 years off can wreck a career permanently. Technique crumbles, and mental toughness vanishes faster than the jumps. Most skaters never bounce back from 1 season off, let alone 2. So when the headlines hit, the pundits spun the same tired narrative, a heartwarming farewell tour. Just a former star having a little fun. The commentary was polite, almost patronizing. They talked about how nice and inspiring it was to see her lace up again. But nobody whispered Olympic gold. Not yet. They were stuck on the memory of the teenage phenom, the kid launching quads and triple axels with reckless ambition. But the game had evolved. Fresh talent rose up. The technical arms race was bloodier than ever. On paper, Liu didn't stand a ghost of a chance. Then the competition started, and something weird happened. She looked distinct. Watch closely, and you saw it. The manic, desperate energy was gone. The suffocating need to land the hardest tricks vanished. In its place was a serene, deadly calm. She wasn't chasing brute force anymore. It was all about efficiency, silk smooth landings, flow, mastery in the transitions. And against all odds, the new strategy started winning. While rivals broke their bodies on high-risk stunts, Alysa nailed the execution, gliding out of jumps like butter, centering every spin. A new swagger in her step sequences. Gone was the nervous kid. Here was a veteran who actually loved the moment. You saw it in her face, the smiles, the laughter after a stumble. In the pressure cooker of elite skating, that's virtually unheard of. Mistakes usually mean meltdowns. Alysa just rolled with the punches, and then the world noticed the biggest change. She wasn't a lone wolf anymore. The isolated prodigy, carrying the world on her shoulders, was gone. Now, she had a squad: Amber Glenn, Isabel Oviedo, the new queens of American ice. The press caught on, dubbing the trio with a killer nickname, the Blade Angels. They cheered loud, they trained hard, they had each other's backs. The lonely war was over. It was a team effort, and shared pressure is a lot lighter than a solo burden. With the weight of the nation distributed, Alysa flew. The results caught fire. Solid skates turned into podium spots. Then came the realization that silenced the room. At Worlds, Alysa wasn't just good, she was a threat, dangerous in a whole new way. A calm competitor is terrifying because they done crack under heat. Component scores skyrocketed. Fans fell in love with the artistry. The broadcasters changed their tune. The sentimental story became a serious title run. But the true defining moment hit at the Milano Cortina Games in 2026. Before the solo events, Team USA locked in for the team battle. And that's where Alysa showed her true colors. Standing on the podium, after clutching gold, her medal ribbon snapped. The hardware hit the floor, leaving a nasty dent. Most skaters would have been mortified. Alysa, she cracked up. She literally laughed, grabbed the damaged medal, and joked that the dent gave it character. It might look like a small detail, but don't be fooled. Flickers like that tell you everything about a competitor's headspace. By the time the individual showdown hit Milan, Alysa wasn't skating like a desperate athlete trying to salvage a career. She moved like a woman who had absolutely nothing left to prove. And that mental freedom, that was about to become her deadliest weapon. The routine she brought to the Olympic stage was unlike anything this sport had witnessed in years. When the women's final rolled around in Milan, you could cut the tension in that arena with a knife. Olympic finals are always a pressure cooker, but this night hit different. The field was stacked with titans. Japan brought their absolute heavy hitters. Europe fielded technical juggernauts, and Team USA, starving after more than 2 decades without a crown, was desperate for a miracle. To put that in perspective, the last American queen to grab Olympic gold was Sarah Hughes back in 2002. 24 years, an entire generation grew up chasing ghosts in that shadow. Now, Alysa Liu was stepping into the spotlight. But if you caught a glimpse of her backstage minutes before the main event, you wouldn't believe your eyes. While rivals were pacing the halls or locked in the zone with noise-canceling headphones, Alysa was just chilling. Cameras actually caught her slurping down a bowl of udon noodles, casually chatting with her coaches about the latest anime plot twist. Not exactly the pre-game ritual you expect for an Olympic gold medal match, but that ice-cold vibe was her new trademark. The pressure couldn't touch her. When the announcer called her name and her blades hit the ice, the mood under the lights shifted instantly. The first beat dropped and heads turned. The track selection alone was a statement. Forget the sleepy orchestral scores everyone recycles. Alysa went full Lady Gaga, dropping a medley that included The Edge of Glory and Applause. It felt dangerous, almost rebellious. Figure skating usually worships stiff tradition and classical restraint. Gaga brought the fire, the energy, the attitude. From the jump, you knew this wasn't a routine designed to beg for points. It was a show designed to bring the house down. She launched into the opener, boom, clean landing, beautiful flow on the exit, then right into the next. But technically, she was playing a different game. Alysa wasn't chasing the body-breaking quadruple jumps that used to define her grind. She doubled down on surgical precision. Triples hit right on the beat, butter-smooth transitions, every landing flowing like water into the next move. Here's the thing about the scorecard. Clean execution is king. Judges don't just reward the stunts, they reward perfection. And Alysa milked that system for all it was worth. Her spins were centered on a dime. Her footwork sequence carved up the ice with intricate steps that never looked frantic. But the real magic wasn't the mechanics, it was the stuff happening in the gaps. Between the jumps, she was working the room, a smirk here, a side eye to the stands there. It felt less like a sport and more like a rock concert. That connection changed the oxygen in the building. The stifling silence of an Olympic final vanished. The crowd woke up and started feeding off her energy. You could feel the electricity by the time the chorus of Edge of Glory hit. Even the commentators were losing their composure. Alysa Liu looked like she was actually having a blast, not surviving. Thriving. That kind of looseness is a unicorn at the Olympics. Usually, nerves turn legs to stone and disasters happen. But Alysa had already lived through her nightmare when she walked away at 16. She survived the bottom. So an Olympic final. That was nothing. Final spin music cuts. She strikes the pose, a split second of stunned silence. Then, bedlam. The place exploded. Before the numbers even flashed, the whole building knew. They just witnessed something special. Not because the math was the hardest, but because it felt complete, confident, human. When the giant screen lit up, the verdict was in. Alysa Liu shot to the top of the leaderboard. Suddenly, the impossible looked inevitable. Unless someone pulled a miracle, the prodigy who quit was about to become the queen, and the skating world was about to have a serious identity crisis about what it takes to win. Alysa didn't win by outsuffering the competition. She won by doing something way harder. She did it her way, and that choice was about to write the perfect ending to her story. When the last skater wrapped up in Milan, the arena went into that agonizing Olympic freeze, scoreboards lagging, judges deliberating. Commentators started buzzing with scenarios, but down on the ice, everyone already knew the deal. Alysa Liu just sat there by the boards, cool as ever, waiting for history to catch up. She stood there stone-faced. No nerves, no visible panic, just the eerie calm of someone who knew the result before it hit the board. Then the numbers flashed, and history didn't just knock, it kicked the door down. Alysa Liu, Olympic champion, the first American woman to snatch the crown since Sarah Hughes back in 2002. 24 years of heartbreak vanished in one 4-minute routine. The arena didn't just cheer, it detonated. Lenses swiveled, teammates stormed the ice, and the stars and stripes went absolutely wild in the bleachers. This wasn't just a win for Team USA, it was an exorcism. For decades, foreign dynasties had held the sport in a chokehold. We were talking Russian squads, Japanese powerhouses, machines built for velocity and technical violence. The Americans were always in the mix, sure, but that gold medal, it always felt a fingertip away. Until tonight. But the hardware isn't the real story here. It's the blueprint she used to get it. She didn't copy the playbook that's ruled women's skating for the last 10 years. No quadruple jumps that shatter bones, no pushing her body until it snapped in half. She won by making the impossible look effortless, pure artistry, flawless edges, and a swagger you can teach. The seed was planted years ago, back when she walked away from the sport at 16. Critics called it burnout, said the pressure cooker chewed up another child star, and spit her out. They were wrong. Leaving the ice gave her a life, campus life, late-night hangs, finding out who she was without skates on. When she finally laced them up again, she wasn't just an athlete, she was bulletproof. She realized a score sheet didn't define her soul anymore. That liberation, it was her secret weapon, while rivals looked like they were marching to the gallows. Alysa looked free. The pressure in Milan was suffocating. One slip, and your legacy is toast. But she treated the Olympic ice like her own personal Broadway stage. The medal ceremony was just the encore. As she climbed the podium and the star-spangled banner started its climb, you expected tears, a breakdown, maybe a collapse. Nope, she stayed cool as the other side of the pillow. Just a genuine, grounded grin when the press swarmed her about the gold, asking about shattering records and ending the drought for American skating. She threw a curveball. The highlight wasn't at the gold around her neck. It was grabbing pizza with her girls afterwards. Sounds trivial, maybe, but that right there is why the world fell in love with her. This sport has always been a factory of robotic perfection and suffocating standards, turning kids into math problems instead of artists. Alysa Liu flipped the script. She proved you don't have to sell your soul to win. Walking away isn't quitting. Sometimes it's reloading. And her Milan masterpiece sent a shockwave to every young skater lacing up in a freezing rink. You don't have to lose yourself to find gold. If it hurts, leave. If you come back, do it your way. The judges gave her the points, sure, but the real win that happened way before the lights came on. It happened the second Alysa Liu decided to skate for the love of it, not the fear of it. That shift turned a burnout kid into a lethal weapon, a champion who knew her why. As the Milan arena went dark that night, the message was crystal clear. Alysa Liu didn't just beat the world, she redefined it.